All right, we are live. Um, I appreciate you coming back on and having another conversation with me. It's much easier to talk to somebody else than it is to sit in a room and talk to yourself and have nobody to interact with. So I really do appreciate you coming on. um,
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on your show again.
so I guess I'll just get right into it. Um, so you're taking the position that free will and an omniscient God are compatible.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I guess can go ahead and elaborate if you will.
Oh, well, I don't believe that the two are incompatible. The omniscience of God, by his nature, means that he does know everything. He is capable of doing whatever he chooses. If we are to accept that God exists, then we have to accept that he is all knowing and all powerful, and that's what the definition of God is in the Abrahamic faith. So, if I were to take that position, then I have to accept the fact that he is all knowing and all powerful. And because of that, I I have to understand that God has the capability of doing things far beyond what I am capable of understanding. Um, his ability to allow us our freedoms is part of what his great plan is, in my opinion. And it is the nature of why we're here. It is the reason for, I guess, his plan for us is the reason that we are able to do what we do in the way that we do it.
Okay. So if I guess what I mean when I say free will, I mean the ability to choose otherwise. So
The ability to what? I'm sorry,
to
you
choose
broke up just a little bit.
sorry, the ability to choose otherwise in no matter what situation you're in. So if
Well, I now we have to clarify that a little bit
mhm.
because just because I say that there's free will does not mean that in every instance, at all time, in every moment, that everything is free. There are certain things that are done or certain things that happen that may be, I guess, predestined, I guess you could say.
Okay,
But that does not necessarily mean that all things are predestined or all things are free. You see what I'm saying?
I do. How would you be able to tell the difference between the two? Something that's a free choice and something that was
Oh,
predestined.
I don't think humans could. Honestly, there are probably instances where um, God has made decisions or done things that or decided on things that we have no knowledge of. And that's something that we would not ever know until after we have, ascended to be with him and he tells us or he shows us what happened.
Okay, so there's no way to demonstrate that the difference between predestined events and free will events.
Well, I mean, for the for our understanding, I no, I don't think that there really is.
Okay.
It's certainly perplexing to think that there are some things that we don't choose. If God makes something happen, for instance, um, you think, oh, did God make that happen or did I? You know,
Okay.
so I just don't think that humans are capable of understanding anything at that level. I mean, we're talking about a level of understanding and knowledge that far outstrips our human brains.
Okay. So this is taking a path that I wasn't anticipating, but it's really interesting. Um, so realistically, we could not have any free will.
I suppose. See, it's okay. I see where you're kind of where you're going with this, and yes, it is absolutely possible. I am not in any way saying that 100%. I am 100% certain that we have free will.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay. That again, this is something that when you're talking about free will, I mean, this is something that's been debated for the past 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years.
Oh yeah.
People have debated this. This is not something that is easily solved.
I don't think
And I
there.
think that when you,
I'm
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't think there is. It's almost unsolvable. Um,
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
from what the best that I can understand is that the generally accepted consensus between neuroscientists and philosophers is that that we actually don't have free will, independent from a God belief of any sort. The general consensus is that we in fact do not have free will. Um,
Well,
like
maybe with certain philosophers or maybe with certain neuroscientists, and that's perfectly fine. But you can go into the realm of physics, and they'll tell you the opposite right now.
what do you mean?
Hmm?
What do you mean the realm of physics? Are you talking about like randomness at the
If, if
quantum
you if you
level?
just if you discuss physics, yes, at the quantum level, there is absolutely an indeterminism. Absolutely, 100%. There's no way that we can predict with 100% certainty, and that's right there. Once we discovered quantum dynamics, that pretty much washed up the idea of free will in a scientific realm. Now that does not mean that there is not cause and effect. I'm not trying to make that assumption at all.
Mhm.
Okay, there are at a macro level when you're looking at a macro level, at a very general, specific, let's just say a kindergarten level of a basketball, going through a hoop, you can predict how that basketball goes through the hoop based on
Mhm.
how you throw. And if you have all of the momentum and inertia and force put behind it by the person throwing and all these different facts put together, yes, you can predict whether or not that ball will go through the hoop. But that's at the very kindergarten level of understanding of our world and our being.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you get down into the deeper levels of quantum mechanics, that is completely out of the water. And the reality is, in my opinion, okay, is that the human brain is far more complex than a basketball
Well, of course.
or a block rolling down an incline. Okay, far more complex than that. And when you're talking about neuronal impulses in a brain, okay, those are absolutely possible. I'm not saying they are, but they are possible to be influenced by quantum fluctuations. Absolutely.
Sure. And I'm sure there's many studies on that kind of stuff. I haven't personally looked into them. I mean, I've heard the argument of just randomness at the quantum level, things popping in and out of existence, unpredictability. I know there is one counter argument to it, but I'm not even going to attempt to make it because I'm not going to pretend I understand anything about quantum physics. Um, and yeah,
That's a
even
bit of a hobby of mine. That's
yeah,
why I'm even
yeah.
able to speak to
I
it.
I think even quantum physicists wouldn't pretend to know quantum physics. But
Well, I mean, if you want to give the viewers a basic, if you want to give the viewers a very basic, understanding of it, so that the layperson can get some kind of an idea.
mhm,
Basically, it's based on the Heisenberg principle, Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay,
yeah,
and basically what it states is that the more accurately that you observe a particle, okay, say an electron, the more accurately you observe it, the more unpredictable your ability to determine
yeah,
its 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 position or momentum is. So basically, that means that once you get down to that level, it becomes impossible to predict its next move,
Right. Yeah.
or it becomes impossible to predict its position.
Yeah.
So because of that, those changes occur. And that's why I'm saying, even at a neural level in the human brain, when you're talking about the trillions of neurons that are in a human brain, I don't know much about neurobiology. I'm not
Mhm.
an expert in that realm whatsoever. But when you get to that level, okay, those neurons could be susceptible to those quantum fluctuations. And
Sure.
because of that, it is possible that those could have an effect. And if they do, then that would at least presuppose the idea of free will.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, as you're going through that, I do recall there is a counter argument to the randomness of the quantum level, but I cannot recall it. Um, but if I could bring it back around, well, actually, I wanted to point out real quick that um, the reason I say that the consensus in neuroscience is that we don't have free will is because various studies are done, and please look them up if you haven't heard of them, of calculations being done to show that the the subconscious part of your brain makes a decision. Um, I think the one study was even up to 10 seconds before you knew what you were going to do. Your brain has already decided that you were going to do it, which is
Oh,
one
that
kind
that
of
study that you're referring to, is actually a half a second. It's not 10 seconds.
well, no, the
The
first
one,
one, I don't even think was half a second. I think it was much less than that, like 0.08 hundredths of a second. I'm just saying the the one that was 10 seconds. Uh, they could predict. Maybe they had like they could press a button on the left or a button on the right, and they were able to predict with 100% accuracy up to 10 seconds which button that the participant was going to push.
yeah,
Um,
yes, I completely
yeah,
understand it. It was a prefrontal cortex exhibiting
yeah,
electrical impulses that occurred before the action occurred. That's completely understandable.
yeah. Well,
However,
not.
I don't believe it's just my opinion,
Mm,
but I don't believe that negates the quantum level argument. As a matter of fact, I think it might actually support it in the event that in relationship. If you think about this, okay, imagine a quantum event happens, okay, whatever it is, and an electron decides at that moment it's going to be on the other side of the atom or whatever, okay, and at that moment that happened to occur right by that neuron, and that neuron fired, okay, because of that electron's movement. And if that neuron fired in the prefrontal cortex and then a half a second later it ended up causing that person to make that reaction, that was a random event. So that's why I'm saying, at least in my opinion, that argument that they're making actually supports the idea of free will, not contradicts it.
well, it would. I don't think it would support the idea of free will because it was a random event that led to the choice being made, not a calculated decision, but it started with something random. So it wasn't them that was freely making the choice. It was something at the quantum level making them make a choice.
Yeah, but the argument to your point there, okay, this is what you just said, okay, was that it was the quantum level event, okay, but in order to denounce free will, you have to say that it has a definite cause. And in that case, there isn't a definite cause because you can't tell because you don't know where the electrons are.
Well, regardless, the cause would still be the electron acting in some way.
Yes, but you can't predict whether that electron
You
was at point A or
you
point
can't
B.
yeah you
You
can't
can't
predict.
say whether or not A caused it or B caused it.
Yeah,
And
but
without a definite cause,
but
you can't make that claim.
it would be A or B caused it. It would never be I caused it. It would be something that was outside of my control causing my action.
But that's not necessarily true either. Okay, because we have to go back. I mean, we're getting into the realm of science. Okay, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah. This is
you're
definitely
you're
not where I was.
you're trying to, yeah. you're trying to get it from a faith perspective, okay?
Right,
And I
yeah.
get that, and it's probably where we should be sticking around because
Yeah,
the
I'd like
viewers will
to try
probably
to
be
get
falling
back to
asleep as we discuss.
I'd definitely like to
Yeah,
try to get back to that.
let,
But I'm actually I'm interested in this. I'm not pretending to like I this is an act, this is an honest conversation here. I don't pretend to know as far as the quantum argument goes for free will. I've done very little. Like I said, I've heard an argument against it. I can look go back and listen to that argument and try to buff up my knowledge on a little bit. But I honestly I don't have an argument for or against the quantum level of free will. And realistically, it's not super relevant to this debate. But it is still a very interesting conversation.
hmm Well, so then, what is your position then? I mean, are you a causal determinist? Are you
Yes.
what?
Well, if I had to give an answer, I would say I'm open to which version of free will we don't have. I'm wholly convinced that just a libertarian free will is not a thing. Whether it's causal determinism makes the most sense to me. Every action has
Why
a
is that?
cause. Well, every actually, in one of your responses on the comment section that I have pulled up on the screen, you summed it up very well when you referenced the Star Wars movie. No matter how many times you hit play,
Um,
from beginning to end, it's gonna play out the same every single time. So if you just kind of extrapolate that to the universe, if you were to somehow magically be able to hit a rewind button and everything just went in
uh-huh.
reverse all the way back to
hmm
let's just say the Big Bang. If you just rewound it all
Okay.
the way back to the Big Bang and you hit play, everything would play out just like a movie would.
And see, that's exactly where, again, I'm sorry, I don't want to get too deep into the quantum world, but that's exactly where quantum mechanics proves that it can't be the case.
Well, it doesn't. Well,
Because at a
quantum.
quantum level,
Hmm?
at a quantum level, differences could have occurred since the Big Bang that would have made this universe a completely different place that we see it today.
Maybe, but that's only under the assumption that quantum mechanics are. Once we've figured out quantum mechanics, then I think you could make the argument. But at this stage, it's not necessarily that the events at the smallest level are random. It just appears that way based off of what we know now. um, we could figure out, in 100 years from now, we could be like, what were we thinking about that? Or maybe we'll confirm it. But I guess if you can't confirm it
Well,
or deny it,
so you're saying that we can't use quantum mechanics as an argument for this?
not as a proof. Of course, you can use it as an argument, but as a like, it wouldn't prove something one way or the other because we still have a very small understanding of quantum mechanics. And I know quantum mechanics are used all the time. Our cell phones
Well,
reliably.
quantum mechanics pretty much superseded all levels of physics. Our natural understanding of physics has completely changed because of quantum physics. This isn't something that is
Right.
just someone's
No,
bright
absolutely. I'm not
idea that
saying,
went
yeah, no,
really
no, no,
well.
no, no. Quantum mechanics, yeah, it's a field. It's like I said, without without our understanding of quantum mechanics, we would never, like, cell phones wouldn't exist. I mean, they're used in so many different things. We have a good grasp of it, but when you get into like the really weird stuff, that I guess what I'm saying is there's so much about quantum mechanics that we don't understand that it wouldn't be used as a proof to a more philosophical argument of whether or not we have free will. I just and like
I
I can't prove. It feels that if every event was exactly the same, um, at the Big Bang, every single thing was 100% the exact same. I believe that it would play out. And again, the argument, and that's just a summary. Um, because let's just say it played out. Maybe, and again, I'm having these thoughts right now. If it did play out differently, I would still suggest that you didn't have a libertarian free will because everything leading up to the point of your decision is reliant on a previous point. I guess the cause and effect argument. That just seems to make the most sense to me. I'm not like super locked into that position, but it does make the most
Hmm.
sense to me. If
Now you've heard of the butterfly effect, right?
yeah, but unfortunately we can't.
From Lawrence. Lawrence, he was the one who came up with this, the butterfly effect.
Hmm?
Even the slightest change in a distant past can cause substantial changes in the present.
Yeah. So that's why I said even if let's just say it were to play out differently, I still wouldn't think that you would have a free choice in that moment because it's reliant upon so much other stuff that was completely outside of your control. So
And that's excellent that you brought that point up. It's excellent that you brought that point up because that is my basis for free will. Okay,
we haven't
because
gotten to the compatibility with omniscience and free will yet. Yeah, you gave. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, please continue.
Um, uh, you gave more. All right. Well, I'll just let's start the conversation with. So in my, I don't know if you well you commented on it. So in my video, we'll just use that as an example. If you have a red button and a blue button in front of you, and God knows that you're going to press the red button, how could you ever choose to press the blue button?
Okay, are you asking me that question, or are you
Yeah.
just summarizing the video?
No, I'm that's a yeah, I'm asking you that question.
Okay, well, again, my argument is that God gave us free will to do that.
But if you were to press the blue button, then God would be wrong and he's no longer omniscient. I guess my overall point would be that one of the two seems to have to go. Either free will or God's omniscience. They're not compatible with each other. Because
Your initial statement, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but your
hmm,
initial statement is incorrect because you just said that God knew you were going to press the red button,
mm-hmm,
and if you had free will, then you would be able to choose the blue button.
right.
But that's incompatible completely because if God is omniscient, then He would know you were pushing the blue button all the time.
That right. So but in that case, I couldn't have pushed the red button.
No, you could have. You could have pushed either button you want, but just God knew what button you were going to push.
So if God knew what button you were going to push, how could you press a different button?
I don't understand how that is even possible that you could connect the two.
Okay, so let's just say yesterday God predicted that today I would
No,
push.
no, 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 no. God did not predict.
Oh, God
God
knew. I'm
knows.
sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's say yesterday God knew that tomorrow I will push the red button. How did I ever
Mm-hmm.
have the option to push the blue button?
God, you, God gave you the okay. What you're doing is you're putting one thing first when you shouldn't be.
Hmm.
Okay. God says here are two buttons. You're free to choose either one you want.
But he already knows which one you're
He
going to
knows
push.
he knows what it is. You can't you right now in this argument, you can't say what that is in this argument. Okay? You can't say what that is because you haven't decided that yet. All right?
Hmm.
So now come tomorrow, you push that blue button. God already knew that.
Yeah, so I
All right?
couldn't have pushed the red button. Otherwise, God would have been wrong.
No, you could have pushed the red button and he would have known that.
So you're saying that God knows that you're going to push the red button or the blue button.
Yep.
Well, that's I mean those are the only two options. That's not omniscience. That's just
Well,
I mean
no, he
I
knows
can
you're gonna.
know.
No, no, no. What I mean is, he knows which one you're gonna press, but he's giving you the option to push whichever one you want.
But you can never push the other button. Otherwise, he would have been wrong about that.
Yes, you can. You can push whatever button you choose. He's giving you that choice. He says you push whatever button you want. He knows which one you're going to press, but
Yeah,
he's giving you the option.
but you don't have the option if he already knew which button you're going to press. If he says
How is it possible? How is that? How can you put those two things together? Why is it that his knowing determines your action? Explain that to me.
it doesn't necessarily determine the action, it just doesn't leave
It doesn't.
it doesn't leave room for the opposite option or action to take place. So if God says tomorrow,
Why is one causing the other?
I'm not saying that it's necessarily causing it. What I'm saying is, it's not like God is commanding you to push the blue button. He just knows that you're going to. So you can't push the red button because then God would have been wrong.
But you don't understand. What you're saying right there is that God, what you're saying is God can't be wrong because you wouldn't have an option. But what I'm saying is whatever option you choose, God already knows.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So he already knows the
Yes,
option. He
whatever.
already knows the option you're going to choose.
No, he knows, but you still have the option to choose it.
Well, but that's not compatible, because if he knows you're going to choose the red button, then you have to choose the red button. Otherwise, he didn't know you were going to choose the red button.
But he wouldn't know you were choosing the red button if you were going to choose the blue button. He would know you were choosing the blue button.
Right. So then in that case, it just switches around to where you couldn't have pushed the red, or I forget which button we're on now. If he knows you're going to push the red button, then you can't choose the blue button. If he knows you're going to push the blue button, then you can't choose the red button.
But you're using the word "can't" there, and that's where I'm saying you're not understanding. Okay, you can choose any button you want. Okay, God is giving you that option. All right, right now you can push any button you want on that keyboard. It doesn't matter. God knows what you're going to push, but you have that choice. As far as you are capable of understanding in your brain, you have that choice.
I agree with, as far as you're capable of understanding, it feels like you have the choice. But let's say tomorrow. Let me ask you a question. So today, God says tomorrow you're going to set your alarm. Not you're going to, but he knows you're going to set your alarm for 6:45. He knew that yesterday. Okay?
And he knows I'm going to be really late for work. Go ahead.
So yesterday he says tomorrow you're going to set. I know you're going to set your alarm for 6:45. Can you set your alarm for 6:40? Can you set your alarm for 6:46?
But okay, here's the thing, dude. Here's the thing. I see what you're saying there. Okay, but what you're not understanding is that his omniscience is of your choice. Do you understand that?
Okay, well,
his omniscience is of your choice.
You're right. So if he already knows what your choice is, how can you make a different choice? He knew what your choice. Let's just say
said it was your choice.
let's say 10,000. Do you think? Let me ask you this: do you think 10,000 years ago? That's an arbitrary number. Just 10,000 years ago, that God knows on what is today? On 2/17 that we were going to have this conversation.
Yeah, he knew.
So then this conversation had to take place. Otherwise, he would have been wrong about that.
It didn't. It did have to. No. Poop. Okay. You said it had to take place.
Yeah.
As in past tense.
Well, the conversation has to take place on 2/17.
I don't understand here. I'm not understanding. Well, first of all, the relevance of that. Number two.
Well, let's just go with.
Knew,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say he knew it was going to happen because he knew what our choice was going to be.
Okay, so how could it not have happened?
If we made another choice.
So then 10,000 years ago, God would have been wrong.
If I made the choice of going out to the bar tonight and drink, he would have known that too.
Right. So 10,000 years ago, if you had made the choice today to go out to the bar and drink instead of having this conversation, 10,000 years ago, God would have been wrong.
No, because 10,000 years ago, God would have known I was out at the bar drinking.
Right, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's exactly what you just
No,
said.
no, no,
That's
it's not.
exactly what you just
No, 10,000 years ago, God knew on 217 this conversation was going to take place.
No, he didn't know that. I mean,
So he's not omniscient.
He knew that, but he knew that. He knew that because it was going to happen.
Right. Okay, so just take that.
I would make those choices.
Right, so take that. He knew it was going to happen. So if he knows it's going to happen, how can it ever not happen?
I think you're putting one before the other again. I have to state this. You're putting one before the other.
Mhm.
Okay? The choice is still ours. He knows the choice.
So if he knows,
doesn't know the event,
okay,
he knows your choice.
So if he knows your choice, how can you choose a different choice?
Because
he already knows your choice.
He knows your choice. Yeah.
He knows your choice. So how can you choose differently? We can bring it back.
You wouldn't choose. You wouldn't choose differently because that's your choice. If you choose A, then why would you not choose A? You chose A. Okay, not B. You chose A, and he knew that.
Right. He knew what your choices were going. Let's bring it back to the red button, blue button thing. I just think I have the visual up on the screen, and I think it just kind of simplifies the argument. So I'll restate the argument again. So 10,000 years ago, God knows on 217, it's 7:42 right now. God knows at 217 at 7:42 p.m. that I'm going to push the red button.
Mm-hmm.
How can what route could I take to go against God's knowing and push the blue button?
I lost you. Oh, okay.
Did I cut out? I'm sorry.
Your choice at this moment. Okay.
You're faced
with a choice.
But you have to remember,
you're faced with a choice right now between red button and blue button, right?
Yeah, but please keep in mind that 10,000 years ago, God already knows which button I'm going to push.
Yep, he knows what button you're going to push.
So how can I push a different button?
Don't you dare say red button or blue button. He knows what button you're going to push. Yes,
so how can I push a different button?
Because you are choosing whatever button that is. And when you choose,
the
choice is blue button, you will have known that.
Right, but he knew this 10,000 years ago. So the choice from my perspective, yes, I'm actively making this choice. But from his perspective, he already knows my choice. So how can I make a different choice than the one he knew 10,000 years ago?
You wouldn't make the different choice than what he knew 10,000 years ago.
Correct.
You would make the choice you're making today, and he would have known it 10,000 years ago.
Correct. So how can I make a different choice? I can't. Yeah, that's my point. I can't make a different choice.
You make whatever choice you want right now, red or blue. And whatever it was, God knew it 10,000 years ago.
Right. But what my question is, how could I have chosen a different button if it was already known which button I was going to choose?
Well, okay, you're thinking, okay, just think, okay, let's step away from this for a moment,
Okay.
okay? Because I think that there's something that needs to be very clear and
Yeah.
clarified in all this for you to understand where I'm coming from anyway,
Sure.
okay? God does not, keep this in mind, and I want
Hmm.
all your viewers to know this too.
Hmm.
God does not exist in our time.
Okay.
He does
So,
not exist in our universe.
well,
He does not
to,
exist in the realm of man.
real quick.
Okay?
Um,
God exists in a different realm. Just hear me out real quick here.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Go
God
ahead. I
exists in a
apologize.
different realm. So God, where God exists right now, Christ was crucified, and we are having this conversation, and spaceships are flying to Mars. All this stuff can happen instantaneously for him. He does not exist in our timeline.
Okay.
So
So,
even using the term 10,000 years ago is irrelevant for God because
yeah.
10,000 years ago was right now for him.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't change the. I've heard the timeless argument. Which first I would say, can you prove that that he's timeless? But even if I granted you that he was timeless, I would be very curious to know how he would affect things in time if he was outside of time. Again, that's a side point. But then I would just change the argument that he made a timeless prediction, or he knew timelessly that I was going to push the red button. It doesn't solve any of the problems, because I guess if my choices are already known, they're already laid out because God knows them, they cannot be any different than what they already are. Or God is
They
wrong.
aren't already. They aren't already are. That's the thing. They aren't already are until you've made the choice.
So God doesn't know what choice I'm
You're
going to
looking at
make
it from a.
until I make it.
No, he knows what choice you're going to make, but he doesn't exist in this existence. He doesn't exist on this world where we are constrained by time.
I will
He
grant you that.
knows what's happened.
I'll
Okay.
yes.
He's outside of it. He's seen the beginning. He's seen the end. He knows the story from start to finish. He knows it. He
So are
knows everything that's happened inside the universe.
okay. So are you suggesting
Okay?
that it is like a movie and will play out exactly the same?
Only, no, not that it will play out the same
Okay.
if it was played twice. No, I don't agree with that at all either. Because each actor, each individual, down to the subatomic particle, be it an electron or be it a human being, they all have things that can be adjusted and changed. Okay?
Hmm.
They all have things that can be adjusted and changed.
Okay. I was just curious if you were making. I was confused. That was a honest question. I didn't know if you were going that route. But I can
No,
grant you. I can grant you that God exists outside of time and doesn't experience time how we experience time. I can grant all of that. It still doesn't have any change on the fundamental argument of that I have no. I can never press a different button than what God already knew I was going to press. And I
what
just
you're
want to be
saying
clear,
is
real quick. I just want to be clear that when I'm referencing the button, it's analogous to free will. It's
right,
just
you're
it's just
exactly.
using an
I
analogy. Yeah, I just
completely
want to
understand.
make it clear. So if God already knows the action that I'm going to take, I cannot take a different action because either God was wrong and he's no longer omniscient, or I had to take the action God knew I was going to take and I don't have free will. The two they're just not compatible.
But again, you're putting the, oh boy. Okay, the gotta collect my thoughts here because it's
Yeah,
gonna
absolutely, man.
sound
Take your time.
convoluted. I'll do that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to do the when the reason why I added the whole God being timeless thing,
Hmm.
God existing out of time. Okay, the reason why I added that is because you had made the claim that 10,000 years ago God knew. Well, in our perspective, did God know 10,000 years ago? Yes, but God didn't. God, again, like I said, it's not a linear thing for
Yeah.
God. Okay, it's not a linear thing, and I don't want to say. well, God didn't exist 10,000 years ago. No, he did. But
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is that it wasn't 10,000 years for him.
Right. No,
Okay.
I just used that number very arbitrarily. I just picked a number.
Right. I
Okay.
get you.
I'll
So God is
go ahead.
existing in the realm of time.
Hmm.
Okay. And he sees anything at any time, anywhere. Okay. So that so again, what you're saying, I understand your argument in that if God says you're going to press the red button, then you have no other choice but to press the red button,
Hmm.
right? Okay. But because God gives you a choice,
But the choice isn't there
that
because
cho-
I'm sorry. I
the point
apologize. Go ahead.
is the choice is the point, okay? The choice is a point at which you have your free will. You can decide A, you can decide B, you can choose red or blue.
Okay.
So, oh,
When
go ahead.
when I said 10,000 years ago, I think a better word would just be because the point in our timeline is absolutely irrelevant. I just picked a number. A better word would be foreknowledge. Um, does God have foreknowledge, regardless of what realm he exists in or whatever? Does God have foreknowledge of all events before they happen?
Yes, he does.
Okay. So
Yes.
if he has foreknowledge of an event happening, how can the event not happen? That they whatever the event is, the event has
It
to
does
take
happen.
place.
It
Right.
does happen. The
Well,
event
it does
happens.
not that it does happen. It has to happen.
That's that's where I
Well, explain
disagree.
to me how it could
If
not
God,
happen. If God knew, if God had foreknowledge that it was going to happen, how could it not happen?
it it could not happen, and if it
Then God
doesn't
wouldn't
happen,
have
God would have
foreknowledge.
known that too.
Right.
No, then God would have known that too.
Correct. But then you switch the argument that God had foreknowledge that it wasn't going to happen. How could it happen?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, well no.
Yes.
That's that's so if God has foreknowledge that something was going to happen, how can it not
Hmm.
happen?
But it does happen.
Right.
That's just it.
I'm asking how could it
You,
not
you said
happen?
you said the event is happening. The blue button is being pushed, right? The blue button is
Sure,
being
yeah.
pushed, right?
Yeah.
You're pushing the blue.
How could
Okay,
how could
and
the
God
red
knew
button
it.
be pushed if God had foreknowledge that the blue button was going to be pushed? How could the red button be pushed?
Well, you just added a caveat to that.
I'm sorry, go.
The first point of the statement is how could the red button be pushed? Because the answer to that is because you have free choice.
But
Now
you don't have free choice.
the second part of second part of your argument is that then God would be wrong, but no, because if you would have chosen the red button, he would have known that too.
So he knows. So what you're arguing right now is that he knows you're going to push the red button and the blue button.
No, he's going to know which button you choose.
Right. So if you
He's not
have
going to
so
direct you to choose a
okay,
button.
if he had foreknowledge that you were going to press the red button and you pushed the blue button, then his foreknowledge was wrong, correct?
If God knew you were pressing the red button, then you would press the red button. Yes.
Right, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm
In
asking
your
is
in your argument.
if he had foreknowledge that you pushed the blue button. He had foreknowledge that you were going to push the blue button, but you pushed
Hmm.
the red button. Was God's foreknowledge wrong?
Well, yes, it would have been wrong in that case because
Okay.
you didn't push the blue button.
Right.
And he in but he is all knowing,
Right.
and he would know that you were pushing the red button.
Right.
So yes, you're
If
right.
he so
If he would have said 10,000 years ago or yesterday, if he
yeah.
would have thought in his brain, okay,
Hmm.
and you were going to push the red button, you push the blue button, if you were to just take everything else out of that and you push the different button, then yes, he would have been wrong.
Right. But he can't
doesn't
be
think
wrong.
that.
But he can't be wrong, right?
He can't be wrong.
So if he can't be wrong and he knows you're
Hmm.
going to okay, so I want to highlight that. He cannot be wrong. And he knows you're going to push the red button. Then you have no option to push the blue button. because he cannot be wrong. You have to push that red button at 7:54 on February 17th. You have to push that blue button, because if you do anything else regarding the buttons, then God's foreknowledge was incorrect. So you had no free will to push the blue button because you had to push the red button. Or God's foreknowledge was wrong and he's no longer omniscient.
The foreknowledge does not exist before the choice was made. It exists, the knowledge of what the decision was after the choice was made.
Well, that's not omniscience. That's just,
The
I mean,
knowledge,
I could do
the
that.
knowledge that he has, the knowledge that he has. Okay, but that's just it. You're putting God in a place before the event. You're putting God in a place 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, yesterday. You're putting him in that place. Okay, he is not seeing a definite decision that you made. Okay.
Okay, well then, I mean,
is different. That is different. That is different than what he has seen. Oh boy, again, it's convoluted. It's convoluted.
I'll give you a chance
he
to.
Sees what you've done.
I'll give you
what you've done.
So he does
To
have the
him, it's a
knowledge.
path. To him, you pushing that button is the path. How about that? Is that better? Is that more understandable?
So God exists in
To
the
him,
future. So are you saying God exists in the present, future, and
past?
past?
Yes, all three.
Okay.
So
if that's the case, then it's going to play out exactly how it's going to play out.
I don't understand. In God's mind, maybe.
So
yes, if you want to talk in God's mind,
the argument. Okay, so
God's mind is going to play out exactly how he knows. Yes.
Yeah. The argument still doesn't change. The argument still doesn't change, because if God knows, let's just say he exists at all time, all at once. So at a certain point in our temporal timeline, he saw an action take place. That action still has to take place. Otherwise, he was wrong.
For God's knowledge, we have to separate that. That is something far beyond what we are capable of understanding. That was my original statement.
Okay.
That's why I said, as far as we understand, we have free will. From God's perspective, he knows how the universe will play out from beginning to end. He knows the beginning, he knows the end. He is the Alpha and the Omega.
Can it play out differently?
From God's perspective,
yeah.
No.
So
he knows the end.
So all events are already. I mean, this is an entirely new argument. You're saying that everything is predetermined.
No.
This is a theological fatalism.
No.
From God's perspective, sure.
This is from his perspective.
So from his perspective,
we have to define this argument either from his perspective or our perspective.
Well, I guess we can never know God's perspective. But
exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, but you're making an argument from God's perspective while simultaneously saying that you can't know God's perspective.
What I'm saying is that we can't know. It is my belief, it is my faith that God knows. Okay? It's my faith that he knows the beginning and the end.
Okay.
But I can't know that. I can't know that.
Well, yeah, because we're not omniscient. But God is.
Exactly.
So it sounds like to me you're now making a theological fatalism argument that from beginning to end everything has already played out. Which
in God's eyes, yes.
Regardless of our knowledge of it, if we don't know about it, doesn't change the fact that it's true. So if it is true that the universe has already played out, that demolishes free will completely because everything's already been predetermined.
No, only, again, you have to understand. You have to understand my point.
Mhm.
We're talking in two different realms of understanding.
Right, but
Okay,
your lack
God's
of
realm of
knowledge,
understanding is.
your so
I'm sorry.
one person's lack of knowledge about a subject doesn't change whether the subject is true or not. So
But it's our experience. That's what I'm talking about, dude.
yeah,
It's our experience is what
I
matters to
agree with
us.
you. Yeah, no. I agree with you 100%. It feels like we experience free will. I agree with you. I don't think anybody would disagree with you. Even a fatalist, you still really feel like you're experiencing free will. And I agree to that 100%. If it, let's just say that somehow, some way, it was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt today that we do not have free will. Let's just say somehow, some way, it was proven. It wouldn't change me. Like I would just continue about my life, um, as I was before. Um, so it's not like super, whether we do or whether we don't doesn't affect um my thought process on things. So I agree with you that we certainly feel like we are experiencing free will. Um, what I'm asking you to do is is make the two, the omniscience and free will, compatible. Um, in a it's it the argument has taken a turn. I sorry, not the argument, but your argument seems to have taken a turn, so I'm not really sure where to go. Because if you're saying that God knows everything from beginning to end, then that means that everything is predetermined. We feel like we are, as we are experiencing it, it feels like we have free will, but we really don't because it's already been predetermined. We just feel like we are experiencing free will.
Again, it's not determined, it's known. And I cannot stress that enough.
Okay, okay.
Determined is not, in my opinion, determined is
I
not known.
I admit I was using the two interchangeably, and I shouldn't have been. Yeah, no, predetermined implies that somebody was pulling the strings to make things happen. That's not what I was meaning. It was it was pre-known that that from beginning to end everything was going to play out exactly how it was going to play out. So there's no wiggle room there for free choice, because then something is going to play out differently than how it was foreseen to play out, if that makes any sense.
This universe that we exist in, our realm of existence, okay, is something that's moving from beginning to an end. Whatever that end might be, 10 billion years from now or
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, who knows? Okay. In its existence, as in general, okay, different things occur. Okay. People make their choices, events occur, what have you. And they all they all occur inside that bubble of what we know is reality. All right. And as far as we, as players in that reality, and I mean we in a general sense, it could be the little space alien on Pluto, who knows? Okay. As far as we are capable, we are we are able to affect the universe around us in many different ways. And that effect is based on the choices that we make. God has seen all of it, He knows all of it, but that doesn't change the fact that we are all in this bubble doing our thing. He is not in this bubble. Whether He knows or not is irrelevant, but in this bubble of our
Well,
reality.
I'm sorry, I have to interject real quick. Whether he knows or not is not irrelevant. it's the entire point of the conversation.
And what? How would that be relevant in our universe?
Because if he knows that something in our universe is going to happen, then it's going to happen. It can't not happen. So, I don't know if we want to circle back to the red button, blue button thing. I feel like it might have been played out.
You keep adding that to the end. You keep adding that thing to the end. It can't not happen.
Right.
But that's just it. He knows what's going to happen. Period. That's it.
Right.
It can't not happen.
Well, that's
he just
but
knows.
No.
Happen.
But that's the point of free will. If he knows that it's going to happen, where do you have the free will for it to not happen?
But see again, you keep adding it in there.
Well, because that's the point. That's the whole point. How can it not happen? I'm just humor me for a moment.
It does happen because you have free will to make it happen.
Okay, but then how can you have free will to not make it happen? Just humor me for a moment and just try to answer that question. How can you make it? Okay, so I'm just gonna go back to the red button, blue button. So if God knows I'm going to press the blue button, how can I choose the red button? He knows I'm going to press the blue button. How can I choose the red button?
You wouldn't choose the red button. You'd choose the blue button.
I would choose the
choice.
But how can I choose to push the red one is what I'm asking.
You can. And he would know then that you were choosing the red button.
But then the argument changes. You would have to, because then you would have to flip the argument. So if you push the red button, he knows I'm going to push the red button. Well, how can I choose the blue button? You say, well, you can choose to push the blue button, but then he knows you're going to push the blue button. So then how can I push the red one?
And you can push the red button. It's your choice. And he just knows the choice.
He already knows.
He's not making you choose it.
I'm not saying he's making you choose it. I'm not saying he's making you choose it at all. What I'm saying is if he already knows the button you're going to push, then you can't push a different button.
Well, why can't you?
Because then he would have been wrong about his knowledge. His knowledge would have been wrong. Are you saying that he doesn't know it until you do it?
No, he knows it. He knows the choice.
He has foreknowledge, correct? He has foreknowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So if he has foreknowledge, that means knowledge before an event takes place. He has foreknowledge. Yes. He knew you were going to push the blue button. That means you can't push the red one because he had foreknowledge that you were going to push the blue one.
You wouldn't push the red button because you chose to push the blue button.
Right, but how can you choose to push the other button if he already knew you were going to choose to push the blue button? Then he would have been wrong.
You could choose that, and he would have known that then too.
So you're just saying he knows that you're going to push the red button and the blue button.
He knows you're going to make one of those choices, and whichever choice you make, he already knew it.
Right.
I said that 20 minutes ago.
But that's the problem. You're not solving the problem. All you're saying is that if you did make a different choice, then he would have had different knowledge. Are you saying that our present action affects his past knowledge? His foreknowledge?
His foreknowledge does not affect your present choice.
But no, the opposite way around. Does our present action affect his foreknowledge?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Does our present action affect his foreknowledge?
Our present affect his foreknowledge.
Yeah, our present action.
It's hard to answer that question, okay? Because ideally, yes, but not in the way you think.
Okay.
All right? And this is, okay. His knowledge comes from he's already seen the movie. He's already seen it, okay? He's looked at it and seen it. He knows. Okay. So he knew you were going to push whatever button you chose.
Well, be specific. He knows I was going to press which button.
The red button, whatever.
Okay.
So he knew it. Okay.
Okay.
So your action, let's just say your present is that moment in the movie, and you pressed it, and he's watching a movie, and he says, "Oh yeah, he pushed the blue button." Yeah. Now you can look anywhere on your timeline, okay, and he will have known that because he's not existing in that movie. In the beginning of that movie, he knew that. In the end of that movie, he knew that because he exists outside of that movie.
Right, but the problem with the
Well,
movie,
that movie was
the problem with the movie analogy is that the movie plays out the exact same way, and the characters in the movie can't take other actions. They're set in their movie.
in their movie. They are making their choices.
So where does the foreknowledge come into play?
He's already seen the movie.
So how can you make a different choice from the movie that he's already seen? How can you,
Because
as a
your
free
choices
agent,
are not affected by what your choices are not affected by what he knows.
I don't think they are either. I don't think his knowledge of the choice makes you or forces you or puppeteers you or command you any way makes you
Sure.
make a choice. I don't think that. It's just all right. So let me just do a quick recap of the argument from my understanding. So if I say God has foreknowledge that I'm going to press the red button, that means I have to press the red button and I can't choose to push the blue button. And if I do choose to push the blue button, then God's foreknowledge was wrong. And you say, well, no, because then he would have just knew that you were going to push the blue button. I need a better analogy because I keep forgetting which red button, blue button. So we'll say this. If God knew I was going to do action X, if I were to ever do action Y, God's foreknowledge was wrong. But then you say, well, if you did choose to do action Y, God would have had foreknowledge that you were going to do action Y. To which I would just respond, well, then if I choose action X, then God's foreknowledge was wrong. And then you'll just swap it back and forth. But the problem is that the foreknowledge is already set. So if I were to choose action X over, if God knew I was going to choose action X, I still cannot choose to do action Y, or God's foreknowledge was wrong. I'm saying
foreknowledge was set.
Well, but it is because it's foreknowledge, knowledge of the event before it takes place. So,
but it's not for. That's just it. It's not for.
what do you mean?
I mean, it's not for. He doesn't know it before it happens. He knew it after it happened and before it happened and while it's happening. He knows it in all states.
So he does have foreknowledge.
Foreknowledge, present knowledge, and future knowledge.
Right.
All knowledge.
Well, foreknowledge.
He saw you pushing whatever button you choose today.
Okay.
He saw you pushing that in our timeline a million years ago.
So then if he saw me pushing it yesterday, a million years ago, 1,000 years in the future, any point in any perspective of the timeline, he saw me choosing action X. So that means I have to choose action X.
No.
I can't choose action Y.
You just said, I chose.
Sure.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And all he did was observe it.
But okay, so he observed it. So how could it play out differently if it was already observed?
It was already observed, and it's going to be observed, and it is being observed.
Right.
Past,
so how can it
future.
play out differently if it's already been observed past, present, future? How can it play out differently?
If you chose to push the other button.
But you wouldn't choose to push the other button. It's already been observed. You're going to
Why
push the
wouldn't
red
you?
button. Because you're going to push the
Why
red button.
wouldn't
It's
you?
because it's already been observed.
You have made a choice in the present to press one of those two buttons. God sees it as if it was in the past and sees it as if it's in the future and sees it as the moment is happening.
Okay. So in which
He sees
option
it in
do I?
all states. In all states.
Right. So
He says, you have
in
the
no
choice to
world.
push whatever button you
So in no world do I ever choose to push the blue button. This is you're making the fatalist argument again that it's predetermined. Because in no
The point
world.
is,
Go ahead.
I say that again. Did I lose you?
No. I stopped. Go ahead with what you were saying.
Okay. The choice that you're making right now is your choice. Red or blue. It doesn't matter what it is.
But the choice is known.
God wants you to go one way or the other. Let's say God wants you to go down path A rather than path B. God wants you to, choose the good person path where you're helping the old lady and not kicking her down the stairs.
But he already
Absolutely,
knows
he
that you're
wants
going to
you
kick her
go
down
one
the
way or
stairs,
other.
right? He already knows you're going to kick her down the
Okay.
stairs.
In the moment that you do it, you have a choice.
But the choice is already known, correct?
Help her. You just hear me out.
Okay. Well, to answer that real quick, the choice is already known, right?
The choice in
God's eyes. In God's eyes, the choice is already known.
Eyes, he knows
So
what you've already done yet.
So then, why would he want something different if he already knows that what's going to take place?
In his knowledge.
I'm sorry, that was a side. That was more of a side question.
Say it again. Say it again.
I brought up a side question. It was completely irrelevant. So I just want to clarify. So the choice that you're going to make, whether to help her up the stairs or kick her down the stairs, the choice is already known by God.
Known.
So how can you choose not
known.
to? So the choice to kick her down the stairs is already known by God. So how can you choose to help her up the stairs if the choice to kick her down the stairs is already known?
Whatever he knows
is going to happen.
Your choice is.
Whatever
is what your choice is.
Right. So that whatever he knows is what's going to happen.
Whatever he knows is what your choice is. So now tell me, are you going to push the red button or the blue button?
Red button.
Then he will know that you were pressing the red button.
Okay, so there's no physical way that I could have pushed the blue button. I had to choose the red button. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known about it.
No, I just asked you. I just gave you a choice. Push one of the buttons.
But I've already agreed with you.
Either one.
I've already agreed with you that it feels like I'm making that choice. I acknowledge that. But I had to make that choice. Whether it feels like I chose to make it or not, I had to. Because otherwise God would have been wrong.
But no, that's not the point. That's not the point.
That's
God
my
would
point.
not have been wrong.
He would have been wrong.
That's not it.
If he knew I was going to push the red button and I pushed the blue one, then he was wrong and he's not omniscient.
But he wouldn't have known you were pressing the red button if you were pressing the blue button, dude.
But I'm saying he did. What I'm saying is he did. You're making like a post hoc argument. What I'm saying is he does know I'm going to push the red one, but I pushed the blue one anyway.
He knows you're going to push the blue. You're going to push the blue button. He knows you're going to push the blue button.
So then I can't push the red one. Otherwise, he didn't know about it.
He knows what button you're going to push. Period.
He knows what button I'm going to push. So how can I push a different button?
That argument doesn't make any. That question doesn't make any sense.
But it does.
He knows what button you're going to push.
It does. And maybe I'm not explaining it. So at this point, maybe I'm not explaining it properly. At this point, I will just whoever comes across this video in the future, Just go on YouTube and just Google free will, God's omniscience versus free will, and the arguments are made a lot better than I'm making them now. And so if you're listening to this video, don't end it here. Keep exploring further. But the question does make sense because the question is my entire point. If there's foreknowledge that an event is going to take place, then that event has to take place. Correct? Or no?
If the foreknowledge says you will press the red button, then you would have, if you're looking at it as a historical point, you would have pressed the red button. Yes.
Well,
If the
not from a
foreknowledge
historical
was that you
point.
were gonna
The
press the blue-
foreknowledge is knowledge beforehand.
But if it's from a but
Foreknowledge is just
again,
to be clear.
but when I say from a historical point, okay,
Okay.
that knowledge is from all points in existence because God does not exist in our timeline, and I have
So-
to bring you back to that. I'm
but
sorry
the
to sound like a
problem-
broken record. It's
No, no,
the
no.
very point.
But the point when you make that argument, what you're making is an argument that everything is already written. If God knows the timeline from
It's
A to Z, it's already everything's going to play out exactly how God knows it's going to play out. So it cannot play out any differently.
In God's perspective only. When you're looking at this argument,
Right,
you
but
have to
again-
remember, it's in God's perspective only.
Right, but again, whether or not we know about it or not doesn't change the fact that it's true. Whether we know that the movie plays out how it's going to play out, whether we have that knowledge doesn't mean that the knowledge doesn't exist. We just don't know it. So from our perspective, it would be irrelevant because God is all-knowing. So if he knows the events from A to Z, then everything's going to play out exactly how he already knows it's going to play out, which leaves no room for change or free will. If you,
But you see, his observation, okay, is after the point that we've had free will, not before.
well, then that's not omniscience. That's well, I mean, that's if that's the argument, then that's wholly unimpressive because I know what happened after it's already happened.
And
Like,
that's
if-
how God sees it.
if
he
the chair-
sees it as already having happened. That's how he's able to know.
But that's not omniscience.
because but it is for his being. It is because
It's-
he doesn't exist in this.
It's
existence.
it's exactly what I can do. He can just do it to a greater level. So if I stood up right now and my
But he
chair
does it
fell over,
outside of time.
outside of time, inside of time, it's irrelevant.
That's
I
a
mean-
huge relevance because you see, he is what you're saying is him having foreknowledge. Okay,
So
is just him having knowledge. It isn't foreknowledge. It isn't post knowledge.
So
it's knowledge.
he just has-
period. No
so-
matter
but-
where it is in our timeline. it's
Sure.
knowledge.
but he does have foreknowledge would be a subset of the knowledge.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Foreknowledge would be included with knowledge. Now there's other knowledge as well, future knowledge, past knowledge, present knowledge, all knowledge, but foreknowledge is included.
Because that's how we are able to understand it only because we exist in a timeline. He does not. It's not
S-
foreknowledge to him. It's just knowledge
Okay.
because he doesn't have fore and after.
Okay, well then
He
it doesn't
have
change
that.
it doesn't change the argument at all. It might make it even worse because if he has, well, he's omniscient. I mean, what we're saying is when we say knowledge, what we mean is he's omniscient. He knows all things
He
at all times.
okay. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this.
Okay.
He exists in this place, just this place that can see everything, everything. Okay. And he says, I'm going to create I'm going to create these beings, and I'm going to give them the ability to make these choices throughout their life. Okay?
But he already
So
knows
he
the
does this.
choices, right?
He does this. He knows how the beginning and the end is going to be.
So he already
He
knows the
knows the
choices?
beginning, Alpha and the Omega. He knows that the devil is going to fall. He
Okay,
knows how the earth is going to end. He knows it
right.
all because he's omniscient. Okay,
But so he
and
already
he says,
so
"I'm going to go
he I
ahead."
just want to be clear, he already knows the choices?
He knows how the end is,
But does
and
he
the choices that we make.
Okay,
Yes,
so
he
he knows
knows
the
the
choices.
choices that
He
we.
knows the choice. So how can we
He
choose differently?
knows the choices.
If the choices are already known, then we
Wouldn't
don't that's not
choose
choice.
differently.
You can't
You
choose
wouldn't choose
differently.
different because he knows your choice. It means you have one, and you can make that choice.
But but he already knows the choice you're going to make, right?
He knows what choice you're going to make,
So
but he's given it to
how
you
can you choose differently? If he already knows the choice you're going to make, how can you choose a different choice? That's no
because his
longer a
knowledge
choice at
doesn't
that.
affect your choice. His knowledge does not affect your
I'm
choice.
not saying it does. I'm not saying his knowledge
And there
affects
you
your
go.
choice. What I'm saying is
There you go.
if he already knows your choice, but that's not my argument. My argument isn't that his knowledge affects your choice in some way. The argument is that his knowledge of the choice locks it into place because you can't make a different choice, which is no longer choice. It's just a movie playing out.
If you look at it, if you were to take your brain and pull it out of this existence and set it on a chair next to God's, yes, that is exactly how it would probably look. It would look as if a movie was being played out and you've already seen the end of it.
Okay, so
But we cannot exist in that realm.
but again, our knowledge of that existence doesn't change that existence. I'm just granting, for the sake of the conversation, I'm granting you that everything, the Christianity, God, everything is true. It is true. So our
In this
knowledge,
argument,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah. In so our knowledge, or I should say, whether we know it or not, doesn't affect the fact that it is. So from our perspective, we don't know it, and it feels like we have this free will, but that doesn't change the fact that the movie has already been played out from beginning to end. It just feels like
God's
we're in it.
perspective,
Yeah. But
from
again,
from God's perspective,
whether we
we
know God's
see,
perspective or not doesn't change the fact. Um,
but it does for our understanding of free will.
I agree. I
Because
agree.
what so
It makes us.
I guess
Maybe I don't agree. Let me
when
just.
you're saying does free will exist, when you're using that term exist, okay, that presupposes the idea that it exists in this universe.
Well, no, no, no. But that's
Okay,
not.
in this
That's not my art. That's
in this
not.
universe it does exist.
Yeah. Well, that's not what. That's not my
Outside
argument.
this universe, that's a different story.
Yeah. The the argument isn't whether free will exists or not. I'm saying is free will compatible with omniscience. And the reason that I'm saying that it's not is because it exactly what we've been talking about. If God, uh, uh, I'll restate it again. I don't know how much time you have. I don't want to eat up your whole night. I can talk for as long
I
as you
do I
want.
do have to get going here.
Okay.
It's been like an hour and a half. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah,
just go
and
ahead and say what you say.
yeah. So in the way that I view it, one of the two has to go. And again, I'll say it. Maybe I'm not making. I'm new at this. I don't have these conversations. I've had them in my head a billion times, but when you're actually communicating back and forth with somebody, it changes a lot of things because it's unpredictable what somebody else is going to say. So maybe I'm not expressing the argument as clearly as I would like. So anybody who does come across this video, just there's hundreds of videos on free will and omniscience compatibility with free will. So I would encourage everybody to go and take a look at those. um, and I'll just recap my point is that if you have a God who knows your choice, then you don't have a choice because you have to make whatever choice God knew about. And if you do make a different choice, then God is no longer omniscient. Or if you do make the quote unquote choice that God already knew you were going to make, then you don't have free will. You're going to make the choice. The choice is already known, so you have to make that choice. There's no other option because God is omniscient. So in my opinion, one of the two has to go, either free will or God's omniscience. Just because if God knows if that you're gonna press the red button, then you can't press the blue button. I guess that's the recap.
Okay. Well, my position, okay, is that they are both completely compatible. Okay. The free will that we understand, the free will that we are able to exercise, is a gift that was given to us by God. And his omniscience does not negate the possibility of free will. As a matter of fact, his omniscience is probably something that, well, I guess from what I was discussing today, is something that exists separate from our free will. Okay? His omniscience exists in one realm, and our free will exists in the other. When God created the heavens and the earth, when he created the universe, okay, it was very clear that there was only one thing. There was God. And God said, I'm going to create a universe. I mean, I'm not obviously quoting scripture here, but basically he says, I'm going to create a universe. And voila. Okay, over the course of billions of years, here comes the universe. All right. And in that universe, he places free will. And that's why I believe that they can both coexist peacefully. His omniscience of how that universe plays out is separate from the universe itself. I believe that in our universe, in our realm of existence, in how we are able to perceive everything that we have, we are able to make choices, good ones and bad ones, and those choices define who we are as people. And God gives us that free choice as a gift. That is something where he steps back and says, I could make a bunch of mindless automatons to worship me 24/7. I could make all these little robots down there do anything that I want them to do. But he said, no, I want to make children who will live with me, who are able to grow in their existence, in their universe. And through that process of making free choice, through that process of growing as a human being, their soul grows, the person grows, you become a better person. And through those choices, you then move toward that other realm of existence. And that free will was given so that we could take those steps and grow. And that's why I believe that they can both coexist peacefully, because they don't even exist in the same realm. In our realm, I do believe we have free will.
Do you mind if I ask one quick follow up question?
Sure.
You said that in your final statement that you said that God has knowledge of how the universe will play out.
Okay.
I'm asking. Maybe I misheard.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I said that. Okay. Okay.
Well, I guess you agree to that statement. God has knowledge of how the universe will play out.
Yes, he has knowledge. Yes, he
Okay.
knows the beginning and the end.
Okay. So, can it play out differently?
It can play out in whatever way the universe plays out. Okay. Again,
But
the
can it play
universe
out
will. This is
differently?
the same thing we talked about for an hour and a half. The
Yeah.
universe will play out in whatever way it will play out, and
Yes.
whatever way that played out is
Yeah.
what God knows.
Mhm.
Is what God knows.
Yeah, so can it play out differently than from what God knows?
It will play out in the way it plays out, and God will know whatever
Can,
way that was.
can it play out
Okay,
differently from
so
how God knows it's going to play out?
I cannot answer that question because it isn't. It won't be different. It
Well,
won't be different. How
so
it plays out is what he knows.
so I think the reason that maybe you can't answer that question is because whether it's yes or whether it's no, might be a defeater for the argument. If I ask, can the universe play out differently than the way God knows it's going to play out, and you say yes, then God's no longer omniscient. If you say no, then we no longer have free will. So if God knows from beginning to end, the universe is going to play out how the
No,
universe is going to play out. I get
he
that,
knows
but
in
he knows
in his
how
realm.
it's going to play
He
out
knows in his realm.
in his realm, in
He
our realm,
knows
in no realms. He knows how the universe is going to play out from A to Z.
in his realm.
He's yes, I grant it, in his realm.
As if it's
Um,
already happened.
yeah,
As if it's already happened.
so it's already been. It's he knows the beginning, he knows the end, correct?
Yes.
So it can't play out differently than that,
No.
right? Um, I don't know why I held my breath through that entire last part there, but I did.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Well, I had
Because
my
again, my argument is very clear. His knowledge, okay, as he exists, is different from our understanding of the universe. Different from our universe. It's different from how we perceive the universe and how
mhm,
we act in our universe. His knowledge of that is a completely separate thing.
okay. Um, I got
Okay.
a I got a new microphone, and I'm still not sure where the limits are of how close my face should be to it. Um, so for whatever reason, during that last part, I was leaning forward, and I felt like my breath was going to be like Darth Vader. On the microphone when you
That's
go
all right.
back and listen to it. So I guess I subconsciously was like holding my breath. I didn't realize it until I almost passed out just now.
That's all right. That's all right. You just take a breath, dude. Take a breath. It's okay.
um,
We got this. We got this.
yeah.
And
Hey,
this is not something that can be answered. It can't be answered by two people like us. Who are we? Who are we? You know, we're just having a discussion here. I mean,
yeah.
I'm no PhD theologian. I mean, you might be a PhD theologian. I'm not.
I
I'm not.
I'm
I'm
not
just
even a
human. You
college
know.
level something. So I genuinely just find this stuff interesting. I would look at it not much differently than like somebody who loves the ocean, somebody who loves space,
Yeah.
somebody who
What
loves.
is your? What, what I know we got to go, but I know we got to
Hey,
go. But
I
what is your
I'm trying to
interest in this?
be conscious of your time. I can talk all night. So
Okay.
what was your question?
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
like, for me, to give an example, okay, I am not a sports fan. Okay,
Hmm.
I really don't like any kind of sports or anything like that. And if I could not imagine wanting to sit down and talk for an hour and a half about sports. I would not want to do it. Why
Um,
would you want to talk about this stuff if you're an atheist?
I
Why would you
still
even care about God? I mean,
I st-
why would you care?
I still, well, I guess that question would be almost unanswerable. It'd be like, why do you like the taste of mayonnaise? Like, I mean, I don't know, just do. But I'm right along with you. I to this very moment, I couldn't tell you who played in the Super Bowl. Like, I genuinely have no idea. Um, um, I mean, we talked about it. Um, nope. I'm trying to think of it, but I have no idea. Like, I could care less about sports. But then you could ask
It was a Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs
Eagles
won
and
38
Chiefs.
to 35. my friend Dave would be happy that I know that fact, even though that I don't know much more other than that.
Hey, you're way ahead of me in sports knowledge already. Um, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really think it would be like, why do you think? Like I just said, like why do you enjoy the taste of ketchup? Like, I don't know. It just tastes good to me. I don't know. I guess I
Okay,
don't know how to answer that. It's just interesting. I guess.
okay. I mean, but I mean, you're it's obviously interesting enough to you to want to make a web channel about it and talk
Mm-hmm.
about it at length. I mean, is it because you want to learn more about it, or do you want to debunk it, or do you want to make more atheist converts, or I mean,
Um,
what?
po- possibly all of the above. But what I don't want to do is have an unfair um platform or conversation. So you could say that the goal would be to okay, I guess if I had a goal, because I'm having you on, I have no idea what you're gonna say at any point in time for past conversations or future conversations. I mean, you could come on and absolutely just whatever my position is, you could destroy it. I have no idea whether you can do that or not, but I would have you on. So I wouldn't say that it's to get atheist converts because your my channel is open to anybody, and the theist side of the argument is just as well represented. Well, what I nothing's represented really right now. What I would like is the theist side of the argument to be represented just as fairly as the atheist side of the argument. So it's not like
Mhm.
I'm, this is a live video. It's not like I'm like cutting clips out of your voice and taking you out of context, and that's why I want to do these things live. Because I don't know what you know. So you're coming into this. We're on an equal playing field. You don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what you're going to say. Both sides, I feel, are represented fairly. Um, so I guess I don't just to have conversations about all this. I guess would be the ultimate goal. I
Okay.
I am making my own side videos, putting up my view on different subjects um, with religion.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think that's like unfair in any way. Um, putting out content, and I'm hoping that the content will attract somebody to be like, well, no, that's not right, and then I can bring them on and have a conversation, an equal playing field conversation about it. Um, so in between the live videos, I'm going to keep trying to pump out content, just giving my views
Hmm.
on my views on the subject, whatever the subject may be, um, and hoping that the videos will get out there, somebody will see them, and then if there's some sort of screening process, which I haven't figured out yet, I don't have to screen you. Obviously, you're not going to come on here and start saying some obscene things or whatever, but and then to so from my content, I'm hoping to engage some type of audience that will come on and then have more live discuss. That's the goal of the channel, is live discussion. I guess
Okay.
if I had to have a goal, I would say that's it.
Okay. Well, hey, I mean, it's a good goal, and I wish you the best of luck with that.
Well,
And again, I thank you for having me on your show, and I, hope it goes well, and I hope you get a lot of views and everything else.
I really appreciate that, and I'll say it maybe a minute or two before the video clip, so I don't end with a yeah again. Um, I really appreciate you doing this and coming on and having a conversation. Because obviously, well, maybe not. I don't know, depending on whether we have free will. Obviously, you don't have to come on and do this. Maybe you do. Um, uh, so I appreciate it, and I mean, I don't know how you felt about it, but I mean, it's. I think we went live at like 7:10, and it's 8:44. And I feel like we just kind of started talking. Time just flies by.
Hmm.
Um,
It does.
So
It really do. It
yeah,
really does. Yes.
yeah. Thank you again for coming on. If there's ever, if you know anybody, um, that or you yourself would have any.
Did anybody make any comments during the live chat or anything?
No, I just checked. When you were giving your closing. Uh, oh my, oops, the live is still. Um, no, no, we have no comments.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
if
Well,
you,
everybody out there, whoever's listening, feel free to comment next time we're talking.
yeah, and I, I, something you said kind of sparked a little curiosity of mine. You said that you've talked to like, what do you call them? Agnostics. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you never really spoken to or had a an in-depth conversation with somebody who is a actively calls themselves labels themselves as an atheist. And I started thinking that it might be that a lot of theists probably haven't had a whole lot of interaction with an atheist. Um, so I was
Well, I mean, we probably have. We probably have. It's just not about theological discussion.
right, right.
You
That's
know, I
what I
mean,
mean. That's what I mean. Yeah,
you run into yeah, you run into atheists all the time. I'm
right.
sure. You know, I probably have some friends that are atheists I didn't realize. You know,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is the theological
to
discussions.
actually sit down and have a discussion about it, that's a different story. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
and just so you know, anybody out there, just so you know, when you're actually doing this live, this is a lot more stressful than
It
just
is.
having a quick
Yo, oh
conversation.
my god, it is. Dude, it is. I had, man, I don't know if you've watched my content or not, and I also wanted to kind of just, I, I really, I truly respect that the group that you guys have. I think that's, I want to be very clear. I think that group is awesome.
Mhm.
I like the fact that you guys are doing that is really cool. I would never
Oh, thank you.
disparage. Um, yeah, I just think that it's those conversations are very good to have. But it's almost like it might be an echo chamber because it's theists agreeing and talking about theology with other theists. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's actually the point of the group. I mean, it's not really. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not meant for everybody because really it is. It is meant for everybody. But I mean, our I guess a lot of what we do ends up falling on ears of people who already believe, and it's
right,
very rare to
right,
have an atheist even
right.
want to bother to take the time to listen to it.
Yeah,
So most of the time, we are just talking to other people who already have a belief in God in some way. You
yeah.
know, not that we intend for that to happen. It's
Sure.
just that atheists don't even want to give it a spare 5 minutes. They're like, well, God doesn't exist, and I don't give a crap about what it is, and I'm not wasting my time to listening to it. You know,
Right, right.
so that's
Yeah,
why that happens. You know.
yeah, if anybody in your group, so I came into the group, was it the women in the Bible? I don't know what how many
That might have
classes,
been the third class.
the
Yeah,
third
that was
class.
the third class. And
So
this
I think
actually
I
isn't really a group so much as it is a class that we're holding. It's
yeah,
6 sessions long.
yeah, so I think I hit 4 of the 6, if I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um and that's kind of what I noticed is that you know what? I feel like this might not be the best discussion to have on a live video. Um, I will contact you tomorrow about this if you don't mind.
Absolutely, no
Okay,
problem.
okay, all right, cool. So yeah, if you or anybody else in your group ever feels that maybe they would want their uh, to strengthen their position by actually having a discussion
Mm-hmm.
with somebody who has an opposite position. I'm open to any and all discussion. So if you know anybody who might want to,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, hey, if they're not listening, I'll let them know.
yeah, all right, for sure. Um, All right, I think we can go ahead and call it. I'll let you get on with your night. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. You can go whenever you're ready. You can go ahead and end the call. I am gonna let the live play out a little bit so it doesn't cut off like the last 30 seconds. But yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, and have a good night.
Good night.